In this video, I'm going to be reading one of the chapters from my new book, Fairy Magic, which is a book I released at the end of last year, and I'm so grateful to all the people who have already purchased it and for all of the amazing feedback that I've received. I'm just so happy that this book is helping people to connect to fairies and their worlds. The chapter that I'm going to be reading from today is from the third part, because the book is split into 5 different parts, and it is specifically on the topic of fairy darts, which is one of my favorite topics. And I actually have a collection of some of these, which I'm going to share in this video as well, which were gifted to me from a really great friend of mine, Diana, who I just think is such a magical person, and I'm so grateful to her for sending me these gifts, and I can't wait to share them with some more details in this video when I get to that part. So, okay, so the first chapter I'm going to read here is called Fairy Darts. And if you're interested in obtaining this book, it's just $40 US, and you can just email me at jeremygarner11@gmail.com, and I will let you know the payment details, and I'll get one shipped out to you from within the US. And that includes the shipping costs as well. Okay. Many may have heard of these mysterious fairy darts, which are said to be thrown at people, causing illnesses, death, or pain. The fairy faith in Celtic countries says the flint arrowheads, so much prized by antiquarians, are called in the Highlands fairy arrows. They are said to have been thrown by the fairies at the sons and daughters of men. The writer possesses one which was thrown at his own maidservant one night when she went to the peat stack for peats. She was aware of something whizzing through the silent air, passing through her hair, grazing her ear, and falling at her feet. Stooping in the bright moonlight, the girl picked up a fairy arrow. The term elfshot existed in some ancient medical texts, and belief in or references to elfshot, which was a sudden sharp pain in the body believed to be caused by invisible elves shooting arrows, still persisted into the 20th century. Elfshot is mentioned in many ancient manuscripts describing afflictions to both animals and people. Some of these elfshots or fairy darts can be very small but very professionally shaped. I am in possession of 7 of these types of darts, 6 of which are very small, and the 7th yellow one, which is much larger. And actually, since then, she has sent me 7 more, so I actually have 14 now, which I am so happy about. It seems clear that these arrowheads were flung or thrown at great speed. What is of interest to mention here, which I have not seen reported before, is the substance of the flint, and how it feels and acts differently to substances that we are used to here. This is mostly noticeable on the large arrowhead that I have. I'll just show that now, so that you can sort of see how these, this is fairy dart I found on horseback 20 years ago. And this explains a lot about how they, this is how they look, but it's going to be very difficult to explain the substance and the way that this feels. But I will go into it in this chapter, and then I will try and explain it myself in my own words as well. But it says, whether these were made by humans or fairies is unknown, but some of these were gifted to me as fairy darts by a very magical woman, most certainly connected to fairies, who found them on horseback 20 years ago. Whatever the case, the substance is very typical of the types of stones that are available in fairyland. For when you touch the stone with strength, it becomes hard as the toughest rock. But when you look at and touch the stone gently, you would feel quite sure that it was a bendable clay, and in fact, it feels very soft and bendable in light fingertips. And I'll just add some information here, like while I'm holding this right now, it literally feels like rubber. It feels completely soft and bendable. But the second that I exert any amount of pressure to it, it becomes just completely hard. And it's like the toughest kind of rock. And then when you just use light fingertips, the whole stone feels like it's just like bendable clay. Like it feels like this is literally moving in my hands right now. And this is truly, to me personally, it's one of the most otherworldly type of substances that I have actually physically held in this realm. And I am certain that anybody else who held this would feel the same thing that I'm referring to. So it feels very, very like you can just bend it, but then as soon as you do, it becomes hard. And to me, that's the perfect example of the type of stone that you find in the fairy worlds, because they are very in between type of world, and so things are sort of malleable, and they work with different laws and principles than what we have here. So I continue on in the book. You can gently bend the arrow, and it convincingly feels that you would be able to do this with ease, but the moment you exert a little extra strength, it becomes very hard to the touch, and it is impossible to bend with fingertips. This is something which must be experienced to be understood, but it is a very uncanny effect, where it feels that the stone is both hard and soft at the same time, and this is most clear with the large fairy dart, but it is quite typical of the rocks found in fairyland, which can also be two things simultaneously, both soft and tough, depending on the use required of it. People used to wear these as protective talismans, perhaps to indicate that they had already been shot at, and so to ward off future attacks, though I am not sure if this was their logic or not. One effect of being shot at by a fairy dart would sometimes result in paralysis or stroke-like symptoms, and there are some theories that when we say somebody has had a stroke, that this term originated from having been struck by the fairies. It is interesting, considering fairies' associations with the air element, that the word we use for being struck or hit hardly is also blow, which has connotations to the wind and air. The word blister is also likely connected to the word blow. Generally, seizures, sharp pains, or sudden paralysis were often thought to have been caused by a stroke or blow from an invisible being. It may be wondered, by those who know the sacredness of cows to fairies, why it is that they have also been known to strike cows with these arrows and darts, or kill cattle in general. This is perhaps best answered in Robert Kirk's Secret Commonwealth of Elves, Fauns, and Fairies, who explains that they are able to extract the essence from the physical form through these holes, which they strike a person or animal with the dart to achieve. And in that book he writes, they also pierce cows or other animals, usually said to be elf-shot, whose purest substance, if they die, these subterraneans take to live on the aerial and ethereal parts, the most spiritus matter for prolonging of life, leaving the terrestrial behind. The cure of such hurts is only for a man to find out the whole with his finger, as if the spirits flowing from a man's warm hand were antidote sufficient against their poisoned darts. This reminds us of the serpent woman described in Fiona Macleod's By the Yellow Moon Rock book, which says she could put the littleness of a fly's bite on the hollow of his throat and take his life out of his body. The Fairy Way also explains a similar theme regarding extraterrestrial life forms when it says essentially they are technicians of the soul and can even by some unknown means draw it out of the body. In this way, the fairies are not killing the essential part of the cow as such, but they are taking the essence of who they are into their lands. Interestingly, considering that the life is in the blood, many of the cases of cattle mutilation around the world report the blood being entirely drained from the cows. It should by no means be assumed that this gives us permission to kill cattle or animals in the same way as the fairies have done, as it is only through a very specific procedure which is unknown to most humans that they are able to extract their essence correctly in their own ways. Robert Kirk also gives us some other useful details about these fairy darts, and he writes, their weapons are mostly solid, earthly bodies. And I find that interesting. He says mostly solid, because this is absolutely mostly solid, but it has a bendable, otherworldly presence to it. Their weapons are mostly solid, earthly bodies, nothing of iron, but much of stone, like to yellow, soft flint. This kind of yellowy color, soft flint. So he actually has said here, mostly solid earthly bodies like to yellow, soft flint, shaped like a barbed arrowhead, but flung like a dart with great force. These arms, cut by art and tools that seems beyond human, have something of the nature of thunderbolt subtlety and mortally wounding the vital parts without breaking the skin, of which wounds I have personally observed in beasts and felt them with my own hands. So I'll just show some of these other ones that I have here, which are a variety of different sizes, and they have been known to many of these types of things have been known to actually have the fairy prints of their hands or fingerprints on them as well. I've read that in a couple of books, but not all of these ones have that same. This is a good one of those those more yellowy ones. Many of these fairy darts, these smaller ones, do not have the same substance feel as this one here, which is, it may be because of the difference in size that you can notice it more, but these ones you don't feel as much that sort of half bendable, half tough substance, except in a few of them. And I think that the ones where I do feel it, like this one here, for example, you can feel it in this one. I think that probably the ones that you can feel it are more likely to have originated from something otherworldly rather than from something here. So this one, for example, is very, very tough, and it doesn't have that soft feel. But this one does, and this one does have that feeling. So, like I said, this was actually written in the medical texts up into the 20th century. Elf-shot and fairy darts were considered, as part of the medical institution. They had these as terms that they used to describe certain illnesses. But that was slowly taken away, so that we don't sort of have as many references to it now. But it's an absolutely fascinating topic, and I would love to hear any stories that anybody might have about these types of things, or if you've ever found anything like this. And I'm just fascinated by this whole topic, and I'm just really curious to find out more. But this one in particular, like I said, is just a most peculiar thing, which I hope more people will be able to experience. And if I ever meet any of you in person, I would be happy to show you how this feels, because I just think it's so uncanny, and I'm quite certain that anybody who picked this up would feel what I'm talking about. So yeah, thank you for listening, and if you want to obtain this book, again, just contact me. It's $40 including shipping, and I get one printed and shipped out to you right away. It's around about 400 pages in total, and it contains a huge wealth of information on fairies, and with a lot of practical exercises and practices that can help you to physically perceive them and to encourage them into your life and to travel to their world.